If you want to go from making your bolts look like this to looking like this, then listen up. You're going to like this video. Today, I'm going to talk about what I call a poor man's parkerizing, which is a way to make your bolts in a natural finish look black and beautiful. So you're going to need a couple things for this. You're going to need some kind of way to clean the bolts, like a cabinet media blaster or a tumbler, something to clean the rust and scale off. You're going to need a phosphoric acid, zinc phosphate solution, and you're going to need some automatic transmission fluid. That's it. Now let's get started. Today, I've taken a collection of some really crusty looking bolts I have that are to the fender apron of a 1970 F250 I'm working on. We're going to take them from looking like this to looking like this. So the first thing we're going to do is march them right over to the sandblasting cabinet. So on my blasting cabinet, I actually like to put my bolts and stuff in a little basket like this. It's an old strainer, and it holds them real nice, so you can kind of just blast them as a batch, and then you can pick them up separately to touch them up. So I'm going to make a little bit of noise here as I turn on my dust collector. We have our bolts all blasted, and by the way, if you don't have a cabinet blaster, don't worry, because you can actually do this without blasting the bolts first. Because the very next step we're going to do is take the bolts and transfer them to a special solution. It's actually called it's a metal prep and rust remover, but this one's special because it contains phosphoric acid, it contains a detergent, and it also contains zinc phosphate. So what we're using today is actually it's made by Mastercoat, and it is Mastercoat's metal prep and rust remover. And you can go to their website. I think you might be able to buy this online too on Amazon. This contains phosphoric acid, zinc phosphate, and a detergent, like I said earlier. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drop our bolts in here, and it's a good idea to wear gloves if you're going to be touching this stuff, even though there's nothing too dangerous in here. Phosphoric acid is a weak acid. Trust me, I'm a scientist. And you drink it in Coke and other stuff. It's not a strong acid, but you can see we have a bubbling action going already, and what's going on here is we are having a reaction with the metal. And we are starting basically the parkerizing process now. We're going to let this sit here for just about 2 hours, and that's going to turn the bolts real nice and black. It's going to give them a nice coating of zinc phosphate on there. And this is why I say don't worry if you don't have a cabinet blaster, because you can actually take those rusty bolts just as they were, set them in here. You have to leave them in here overnight though, and you can bring them out the next morning and they will look just like they're blasted before going in. It will dissolve all of that rust away. The reason I blast them before is that this is just a little faster, because I'm just going to let them sit in here for 2 hours, just enough to get real nice and black. Now, this stuff works when it's cold, but it's going to work much better when it's warm. The reaction just happens faster. Most chemical reactions actually do work better in the presence of warmth or heat. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. Anyway, we're going to let this go for 2 hours, and then we're going to come back and go on to our next step. We are now 1 hour into it, and I am just showing you this because I always think this is kind of cool. You can actually see the shape of the bolts in the little bubbles and foam that comes up. So they've been sitting for 2 hours, and here's what it looks like. They are a much darker gray from the zinc working on them versus when we took them out of the blaster. Now, they will continue to get a little darker the longer you leave them set in here, but we're going to take these out now. Kind of an easy trick I use to do this if you had a bunch of them is to take a second bowl and just dump it in into your little catcher there. Now, you will want to dry these off. Take each bolt and kind of soak up all this excess acid and solution on here. And you can either let them dry overnight, which is probably what I'll do, or you can, well, I might actually, I don't know, haven't decided. You can let them dry overnight, or you can take a heat gun and kind of dry them off that way too. I actually might dry them off with a heat gun. So there's our step 3. And this is a darkened bolt. Remember how rusty those were? Well, you saw them come clean up to the blaster, but now these have started to get parkerized, which is the chemical conversion of the steel to a phosphate coating. In this case, it's zinc phosphate aided with the phosphoric acid in there. Just giving these a spritz with the heat gun to help them get dried down. And now for the last step, what we're going to do is drop them into some automatic transmission fluid and let them soak here. And the longer they soak, the better, because this is allowing the oil to really get soaked into all the pores of the metal, which we have really opened up with the acid because we have etched the metal. And I usually let these soak in here for at least an hour. Or if you're at the end of the day, you can actually leave them in there all night as well. I'm going to add just a little more to this so we can cover everything. Okay, so our bolts have been sitting in here for about an hour. Now you may be asking, why automatic transmission fluid? Can it be another oil? And the answer is yes, it can be another oil. I use ATF just because it is a thin, lightweight oil and it is a lot easier to clean up. But if you have something else around, you could try using that as well. So I'm just going to take these out now and kind of let them drip off a little bit. And then wipe them down and kind of soak up as much of the excess on there as I can. One of the nice things about having the ATF on your bolts, or whatever oil you choose now, is that you also have the oil on your threads. So you're going to have nice and lubricated threads. You'll even have oil underneath your bolt head, so you can get more accurate torquing. And this is what our bolt looks like after it's soaked in the oil for a bit. Jump back to the beginning of the video if you need to remind yourself just how rusty these were. And now look how pretty they are. So I'm going to let them sit here, because sometimes what they also do is they do tend to darken up once they've sat a little bit. And so I'm just going to let them sit overnight and continue to kind of soak up the soil that is still sitting on them. And we'll take a look at them tomorrow. The one thing that I have not figured out, because this is kind of my own method of doing this, some of the bolts come out really nice and black, like these ones here, and others come out more of a really dark gray, like these ones. And I haven't exactly figured out what makes that happen yet, whether it's just the length of time they sit in the acid, which I think might be. If you want them darker, leave them sit in there for maybe 4 hours or so. But it seems like they tend to darken up a little bit with the transmission fluid soak as well. Anyway, I'm going to stop it right there, wipe the rest of these down, and we'll check it out tomorrow. Well, here we go. These are all of those rusty bolts we started with. Now they are nice, parkerized, beautiful, black, gray bolts. I love the way these look. So one point I do want to leave you with is parkerizing a finish like this, parkerizing a bolt like this, will not leave it with a rust-proof or a waterproof, weatherproof finish. If you put these bolts outside in the rain, they're not plated. They're not going to have the protection of being plated like a zinc plating. If you put them outside in the rain, they will rust in probably a pretty short time. However, what they are perfect for is car restorations where the car isn't going to see a lot of rain or weather, interior parts, stuff like that, where you want nice looking bolts, but it's not going to see a lot of rain, snow, etc., etc. Think of it like the metal treatment on a gun. That is not rust proof. If you let your gun sit outside, because gun barrels are parkerized and then they have a bluing agent on them. If you keep your gun outside in the rain, the barrel is going to be rusty. But as long as you keep the barrel or the gun in the house, keep it oiled up, keep it dry, it's going to last for a long time and look great. Well, I hope you enjoyed this and found it useful. Thanks for watching, guys.